Super Smash Bros. Melee is an incredible game, and for all of its perfections and all of its flaws, I have not gotten sick of playing it in over 20 years. But no game is perfect, especially on release, and Melee is no different. Even though it was made before the era of constant patches and balance updates, Nintendo still found it necessary to patch the physical discs that Melee was released on, resulting in both version 1.1, 1.2, and PAL, the European version of Melee. And even these days, the competitive scene still discusses and adds changes, albeit very minor ones. While some of these changes are used in official tournament play and some of them are just for fun, there is one thing that we can all agree upon. Now, I know you all want to see what the actual balance changes would be, and to that I say, what's up guys? You already know, it's me Kira, and today I'm going to meld both my 20-year Melee career and my professional game design career together to present to you the patch notes that would save Melee. So as a game designer, the first thing we have to talk about is our goals. Without a clear vision, any changes we make won't really have any reasoning or foundation behind them, and that often leads to poorly focused changes and allows for high amounts of personal bias. So here's the ideology behind all the changes we'll be making today. Number 1, change as little as possible. Melee has stood on its own legs for 20 years, and even now there are still changes in the meta that nobody in the world could have ever foreseen. There's no need to artificially try to adjust the meta on our own because it's still fully alive and healthy by itself. Number 2, maintain character playstyles. It would be weird if Peach all of a sudden became a projectile-heavy zoner, or if Young Link turned into a rush-down, pressure-heavy space animal. We want to ensure that people still enjoy their main, the main that they've put countless hours of effort into learning, and we don't want to destroy any of the history behind any character. For this reason, I strongly believe that keeping the most played characters completely unchanged is very important, and I'll show you exactly why later in the video. Number 3, increase watchability at all levels of play. Now, this one's really tough, because while we want to reduce stale and boring strategies, we do not want to adversely affect top-level play. More than any other game, Melee is ruled by its top players. 100 times more people watch this game than actually try to pick it up, and I expect that would actually stay the same even if we made Melee really approachable, just because of its sheer difficulty at top level. Number 4, avoid homogenizing the cast. While other Smash mods did a ton of awesome things for the community that I'm very appreciative of, some people had issues with at least one aspect, which was that every character seemed to have a very straightforward, predictable combo game. For example, almost every character had the standard grab into aerial follow-up, which is basically the same thing as making a grab do 25% worth of damage into a potential juggle situation. Ideally, every character would be very unique and have different quote-unquote stats in edgeguarding, neutral tools, movement, etc., so as to keep them all as unique as possible. And finally, our goal is actually not to make everything perfectly balanced. This is a very crucial aspect that most people who lack games development experience often overlook. For Melee in particular, making every character perfectly balanced would violate one of our previous 3 goals. First, this would drastically affect top-level play, as everyone would now have to change how they fight against basically all of these new and improved characters, which would drastically affect the meta. But even if we tried to keep the top level the same, each character's original playstyle would have to be severely compromised. Many of Melee's characters have severe flaws that, if improved, would either fundamentally affect how they play, or would mean that their advantages would have to be improved drastically enough to make up for their absurd weaknesses. For example, Roy's attacks would need more knockback, which would not only change his neutral game, his combo routes, and win conditions, but would also just really change how the character feels. But the thing is, even if we didn't want to change his knockback, then in order to make him balanced, we'd have to make his advantages even stronger. But that would mean giving him like an even better dash dance and even better grab, something that would definitely look absurd. So then our last option for maintaining perfect balance would be to homogenize most of the cast, so that people wouldn't have to change their playstyle nearly as much. However, that would also result in a less interesting game because there really wouldn't be a need for so many different characters if they all played exactly the same. This is a super key concept to understand because you'll see some changes that nerf characters that aren't the best and buff characters that are already pretty strong. So just keep in mind that perfect balance is not our goal, and instead we aim to preserve the integrity of the game while removing anomalous issues and increasing viewer watchability. So, with all of that out of the way, we can finally get to the actual changes. Here they are. Fox, Falco, Marth, Sheik, Falcon, and Peach, no major changes. Yes, you read this right. I strongly believe that most of the things people want to change about these characters should not be changed at all. Let's go over one example. Some people believe that Falco should get his PAL grab, which makes his up throw follow-ups much more consistent. However, they underestimate just how much this changes about the game. One of Falco's strengths is that he's able to put on huge amounts of pressure and stay in a slight advantage state for long periods of time, but he can't quite capitalize with a grab. If he could, that wouldn't just make his pressure unreasonably strong, but it would also change how people need to play against him. Shielding in general just becomes so much worse against Falco. But the problem isn't just that it makes Falco better, it's about how it forces everyone else to change how they play. I mean, you can imagine that if Falco's grab always led into a guaranteed follow-up, we wouldn't see most of the interesting shield pressure we do now. Instead, Falco's would just be fishing for grab setups and looking to punish the two things that avoid grabs, which are roll and spot dodge. If all of the intricacies of Falco's pressure were just boiled down to fish for grab and occasionally punish roll and spot dodge, that would be a tragedy that I believe most people would prefer to avoid. Other things along this line would be giving Fox a shorter up B like in PAL, or turning Marth's down air into a meteor smash. Again, these change the way that people have to play, meaning they can't recover from the same angles, and different spots now have different strengths and weaknesses due to the shorter up B length. Although these changes might seem very slight, they do unnecessarily alter the meta in a way that goes against our overall goals for the game. And for Marth's down air in particular, it decreases spectator interest. Even nerfing Marth's chain grab isn't necessary, because it's actually unreactable in a lot of spots. Kadoran has talked about this on his channel before, and often opts to go for reaction tech chases over chain grabbing because of that. And even Zane, the one person who's mastered chain grabbing more than anyone else in Smash history, sometimes opts to end his chain grabs early when it's really ambiguous. Peach's RNG on her forward smash and turnip pull also shouldn't be changed, as this is honestly a great part of her kit. Just the threat of pulling something truly dangerous is honestly enough to stop the non-interactability that some characters use against her. Now, some people think there should be a predictable order to the items she pulls, but even if we kept the probability the same, that would mean she'd have to pull 128 turns in a row to get a bomb. And sure, the game could choose a random point in the turnip order to start at, but even so, that takes away moments like this combo from Armada, where he pulls 2 Stitch faces in a row, a 0.029% chance, or 1 in 3,448. Now, that doesn't mean these characters are perfect, and there are a couple minor changes I want to talk about. Marth's counters shouldn't get poked at certain angles, but we still want to preserve the ability to sweet spot the ledge to avoid getting hit. Falcon now has Pal Gentleman, meaning you don't have to perform an oddly specific technique to stop doing rapid jabs. And Sheik's down throw animation is now 80% shorter. Basically, you can imagine if she just had Falcon's down throw instead. This one's interesting because people hate getting down throw killed by Sheik, but that in and of itself isn't a bad mechanic. While a non-experienced designer might take player feedback into consideration and say, wow, we should remove Sheik's down throw fair, an experienced one would see that what sucks about it is not the fact that it kills you, but how inevitable it is while taking up a lot of time. Marth and Fox's chain grabs might not feel great to get hit by, but watching them isn't nearly as bad, and for sure nobody is trying to ban them the way people try to ban chain grabs in the Sheik Ditto, because it's much more exciting and dynamic than Sheik's. And even if we do reduce the animation time, Sheik will still have the same amount of frames to act after her down throw, so nothing actually gets changed gameplay-wise. It just makes the game more watchable. Think of it as a quality of life buff for actual viewers and the people who play against Sheik, including herself. Now, the only other thing I would potentially consider adding is having Fox's up smash be as weak as it is in PAL, which really isn't that much weaker. Most of Fox's setups would basically be the same, as the only thing that changes is that you now have to worry about this kill confirm 10% later than usual. One of Fox's many strengths is that he has so many different ways to kill you, so pushing one of them back by 10% really doesn't change any of that. But now, here's where the changes get real. For Jigglypuff, I'd propose reducing the number of her jumps from 6 to 5, as well as having her jump height deteriorate faster. So her new 3rd, 4th, and 5th jump height would now be the same as her old 4th, 5th, and 6th jump height. Yes, this does nerf Jigglypuff hard, but if you've been following this channel, you know I love Jigglypuff and don't think she's lame at all. But even I have to admit that it's simply less entertaining to have her run away forever. Going back to our goals, it reduces interaction, promotes stale gameplay, and is generally a worse viewing experience for spectators. As for the jump height changes, this isn't exactly a nerf. Yes, she might get less height than before, but at top level that can actually help her weave through certain defensive moves, as players like Hungrybox and Drugged Fox understand quite well. It also allows for edgeguarding to have better risk-reward, as the interactions themselves don't change, but their effectiveness does improve. All in all, this is probably the biggest change I would ever make to the top level of play, but it still preserves the playstyle and overall feel of the character while improving other aspects of the game. Design-wise, Pikachu has the most room for improvement. Most of the good characters already have all the tools they need to fight each other, as well as providing incredible entertainment for viewers. However, Pikachu is the first character to have a very odd and unnecessary weakness. All of Pikachu's aerials, but especially his up air, do way less damage than everyone else's, meaning that when he does combos, it's basically doing the same damage as another character doing a 2-hit combo. Aside from chain grabs or gimps, Pikachu's strongest combos typically add a trivial amount of percent and end in a very average knockback neutral air. That not only means that Pikachu's combos take up a lot of time for very little percent, but it also means that he's shoehorned into going for a cheesy gimp over any other option in the game. Increasing Pikachu's up air damage from a measly 4% base damage to a 10% base damage still has it doing less percent than most other aerials, but makes its inclusion in combos much more meaningful. Another issue with Pikachu is that there's rarely a reason to use down air or back air over just the standard nair. While most characters have at least some niche use for all their moves, Pikachu's down air and back air really only exist to unstale his nair, because that's really all he wants to use. They don't add more combo routes, they don't do more damage, and they don't have better knockback or hit stun. So we need to give their existence some meaning. With back air and down air, we could reduce their abysmal 15 and 20 frames of landing lag respectively, since neither do anything that would warrant that type of drawback, but that change would still serve the same purpose as before, which is to unstale nair. Instead, we should have Pikachu's back air do extra damage, and his down air have extra knockback. Again, we don't want Pikachu players changing how they play, so turning either of those into like a walling move or a combo extender wouldn't be the right adjustment. Instead, when they already go for their up air, neutral air combos, they can just end it in a back air and at least get some extra damage, or they can end it in a down air at higher percents. And one last small change would be to give Pikachu's down B less offstage lag and a bigger hitbox, which would make Pikachu more fun at all levels of play, while still not affecting top level very much, since it would still be very punishable. Samus's problems are less extreme than Pikachu and Jigglypuff's, but she has a lot of them regardless. For one, she should no longer lose her charge shot if she's hit out of up B. And two, her up B shouldn't get SDI'd out of so easily. This is one of Samus's only defensive options, since her grab and even her short hop aerials can leave her vulnerable, and the fact that she can simply be counter hit out of it is a bit of a shame. This also doesn't change her current gameplay, as most Samus players opt to use it anyway, but it simply makes the option more consistent and reliable. Samus's down throw to aerial combos could also be more consistent versus floaties, as it's really weird that they don't actually lead to anything at certain percents. The fact that her grab is such a big risk alone should allow for some type of reward when she does land one, and she already gets consistent follow-ups on the rest of the cast. This also increases the spectator experience, as there are more combos for her to do and increases overall damage output, which speeds up matches. Floaty versus floaty matchups are already the biggest threats to our overall vision, and this is one way of improving that while still preserving the character's playstyle and not affecting top level play. And finally, one change for fun is that the short hop double missile execution window should be easier. For how patient Samus's gameplay is, she oddly has some of the most technical and execution heavy techniques in the entirety of the game. However, it's kind of a shame that basically nobody uses these awesome techniques because of how difficult they are, and this would be a great step towards fixing that. So this one's a bit weird. Remember our thought process behind changing Sheik's down throw? Well, some people think that if Icy still had their wobble, but instead of 30 seconds of love taps, it was a super hype combo, that things would be fine. But I actually don't agree. Making the wobble still possible, but just extremely hard, doesn't actually improve anything, and is basically just an arbitrary execution barrier to playing the character, which is honestly still the same as a wobble. What we actually need is a combo game that embodies all of the things we love about Melee's mechanics. A relatively reliable combo tree that gives mix-ups based on DI and what move the opponent is hit by. This is actually what makes Falco's combo game so incredibly fun and rewarding. Long guaranteed combos are technically always possible, but they require reads, baits, and mix-ups in order to get them, which means that they rarely happen, but good players are able to get them more often. Now, I said this one's weird because this would require a huge overhaul of the character, and detailing that would be long enough for a video of its own, but just know that this would be the ideal goal of the character. This would still make Ice Climbers' grabs absurdly powerful with the chance to 0 to death, but also adds in more execution, DI mix-ups, reads, and edge guarding to pull it off, which is everything we love about Melee. Luigi already has the giant combo game tree we talked about in the Ice Climbers section. He's a very unique character with a poor recovery, which is totally fine. But it's just that an absurd limitation was placed on one of his recovery moves that already isn't even that great. Luigi's recovery is pretty easily abusable, and honestly, even with this change, it wouldn't improve his recovery nearly as much as people might think. But not only that, it stays in line with his very unique playstyle and recovery options. Another change might be the ability to charge up his misfire, something I actually really liked about other Smash games. Edgeguarding it still happens in the exact same way, it's just that it becomes more reliable. And it also allows for combos like this, which helps speed up his games against floaties. And lastly, a very small change, Luigi's taunt spike should be a true spike and not a meteor smash. It's already absurdly hard to land it, and for all of that work to be negated by a meteor smash completely takes the hype out of this move. Dr. Mario's most impactful change would be to make his grab to fair combo more reliable on DI behind. Believe it or not, a lot of times this isn't a true combo or requires task level inputs to pull off. This not only should have been possible before, but also doesn't change his playstyle and improves floaty matchups once again. And finally, Doc's up B cancel actually combos now. Yes, it actually isn't ever a true combo, and that's a huge missed opportunity. Shield pressuring both Dr. Mario and Mario is a lot easier due to their lack of range out of shield, and adding this sick reversal option doesn't change that at all. However, if you do mess up or the Dr. Mario has good movement, then you should actually get punished. There's also a big risk reward on this because if you ever do read the up B cancel, even if it does get canceled, it's still a free combo starter for you. So I believe that this is a solid change overall. And for Mario, all that really needs to be changed is making his up B wall jump execution more reliable. It's easy enough on Yoshi's Story, but it's really tough on other stages with short walls or ledges. And you could play with giving him an up B cancel like Doc. The trajectory would have to be different to add to the similar but different properties of Melee's quote-unquote clones, but I can't really think of a reason Doc should have it, but Mario shouldn't. For Ganon, although he isn't the strongest character, there isn't much we could do that wouldn't completely change his playstyle. I did consider making his down tilt a little faster so he'd have a starter combo out of CC, something like Samus's down tilt, but that would make everyone else more wary of getting in close on him, so he's good as is. With DK, however, he has a dual problem of barely having any ground game while also not being able to approach very well in the air. Most other Smash mods would probably just give him a usable nair and increase his horizontal aerial movement, but all that would do would just be to turn him into another Captain Falcon. Instead, we can allow his currently underused ground moves to have more impact on the game, so that there are less wasted moves in his kit, and we do this by improving his jabs and tilts. DK's tilts currently have the Roy effect, where DK can land an attack and still get hit back immediately. His tilts are already decently fast and have great range, so adding just a tiny bit of knockback would ensure that he doesn't get punished for landing a move, which would be a nice quality of life change. And as for his jabs, reducing some of their unbelievably long end lag wouldn't change his gameplay to be more ground based or anything, but it would give him more shield pressure options after an aerial. And finally, Game & Watch probably has the most obvious change of allowing all his aerials to be properly L-cancelled. That would be a fine start, as there are currently no real gameplay benefits to removing the L-cancel mechanic just for him. The other major change would just be to increase Game & Watch's shield size, as he definitely has one of, if not the worst shield in the game. Now, it is still really important and good to vary shield size difference in characters, but for Mr. Game & Watch, it basically adds nothing interesting. He doesn't really need such an extreme flaw because he already dies so early and it doesn't really change how people play against him. It just removes an extremely severe drawback that basically serves no purpose. And if you wanted to make a change for fun, you could increase the up B damage and knockback. As one of the only frame 1 moves in the game, I think it could have a lot more use. Its lag time wouldn't change and it would be equally punishable as before, but it could serve as a decent combo finisher and actually make use of its absurdly fast speed. Now, out of consideration for the length of this video, I won't go into every single low tier in the game, but most of them should generally stay bad, yet still have some quality of life changes that allow them to fight on fair terms. For example, Kirby's forward and back throws don't need to hard combo into 0 to deaths, but there's no need for them to be as utterly pointless as they are. And Zelda, who's built around being a powerhouse with relatively slow speed, could benefit from just allowing her power moves to not be complete dead weight. But there's also other changes people aren't talking about, such as allowing tall characters to grab Sheik's dash attack and down tilt on shield more reliably, normalizing ECB manipulation on the first ledge grab, and fixing the battlefield ledges so that people no longer get battlefielded. Phantom hits also don't need to be a thing, and whether we decide to make phantom hits do full damage or just completely whiff honestly doesn't really matter, because it's the fake out aspect of it that's what really bothers people. Other small aspects, such as being able to toggle Frozen Stadium, Shy Guys, or Wispy's Wind, can also be nice benefits that don't outright remove options, and even customizable stages could be a fun addition that would reward labbing and allow for variation while not changing the fundamentals of how characters play. And I personally think that making FOD platform movement predictable like Randall would be a hugely beneficial change for the whole community, but again, that could simply be a toggle so we'd have the option to see what it's like without hard committing to it. So all of this to say, if I were in charge of patching Super Smash Bros. Melee, this is what I believe would not only be the most fair changes to the game, but also the most exciting. As for my game design career, I currently plan to release Epiphany City in either March or April of this year. I've already received so much support and encouragement from you all, but for those of you who are especially awesome, you can tell your friends about the game and get them excited for its release as well. My game will not be expensive, and I promise it will leave an effect on you by the end, both mechanically and emotionally. You can continue to get updates by signing up for a very awesome newsletter at epiphanycity.com/demo. Thanks.